I'm Leela Singh, your podcast host, and I'd like to welcome you to the My Brand HQ podcast, all things personal branding for career acceleration. This podcast is for talented, ambitious career professionals like you who are wanting to be perceived as a thought leader, to be top of mind to those that matter, and to make an impact and stand out, be that in your team, your organization, or your industry, and to be inspired by other successful leaders. I will be interviewing high-achieving career professionals who have carved out a successful career in their field and are open to sharing their career journey, their challenges, their learnings and insights with you, someone who is looking to establish your personal brand and accelerate your career. Through my personal branding and coaching practice, I enable career professionals primarily in the technology industry to earn more money, to increase their salary. In fact, I spoke to all of my past clients that I've worked with over several years and learned that actually overall, they've received an average of 47% increase in their package. Would that be a great place to be? They've also all achieved at least one, if not more, promotions or moved on to a higher level in their career at another organization. And they're looking to advance their career while showing up as the best version of themselves. If this sounds like you, then do reach out to me and let's have a chat. And why do I do this? Well, during my corporate career spanning 25 years, I quickly realized that hard work alone was not enough to get me to where I wanted to be and the success that I strive for. And my belief is that hard work, coupled with creating and establishing a strong personal brand, can both influence and accelerate your career and get you to where you want to be. In today's episode, I'm going to be speaking with Paul Excell. Paul is an award-winning Global CxO, tech pioneer, chair and non-exec director, board advisor and coach with an impressive track record of delivering growth and digital transformation in global technology companies. His unique career journey started in his family's food and retail business, followed by an apprenticeship, global executive career, and is now giving back as a Tech ScaleUp Board Advisor, investor, and accredited executive growth coach. His remarkable journey insights offer the best of both worlds: entrepreneurial, innovative mindset and agility, and delivering at global scale. He has codified his insights into a growth framework for innovative, agile leaders and teams, the 7 C's of Agile Leaders. Paul's life journey has made him passionate about opportunities coming from inclusive education and entrepreneurialism, enabling social mobility. He also believes it is vital to nurture the generations of technology entrepreneurs to address the world's climate crisis and deliver sustainable growth for all. In today's episode, Paul will be sharing how his experience gained in his local family store set the foundations for his corporate, startup, and leadership success. How staying curious is essential for personal and professional growth, the impact of being in the moment with others, his obsession with understanding and valuing the customer, and the core distinctions between working in startups versus corporates. So let's head over and hear what Paul has to say. Paul, good morning and welcome to My Brand HQ. It's great to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm well. Good morning. It's great to see you too as well. Great to be here.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for this conversation because I think there's going to be loads to cover, loads of those great nuggets come out of this. So tell me, first of all, you have a truly accomplished career. You've done it all, and I think many people will be surprised to learn that you actually left school at 16. So I'd like you to share a little bit more about that and what led you towards the leadership roles early on.
Okay. Great question. So I suppose those formative years for me, and I love drawing on them. I suppose it's reflecting now. I've got to the age I am. My early days working, indeed, my parents ran basically the family store, the retail store. I come from rural Suffolk, that's where I was born and brought up. So it was an amazing and probably my best entrepreneurial training ever. I mean, putting aside London Business School and IMD and all these great schools and universities I've been to, probably the best training I ever had was working with mum and dad in the village store in terms of its entrepreneurial side of things. And why is that? Well, in order to try and make things work, there was a whole bunch of stuff on sales and marketing we did at that level, particularly as the new supermarkets moved into the area, trying to find ways to kind of make ends meet. Dad was great at sales and marketing. Mum was great on the operations and finance side. We would effectively do the financials on a daily basis, so we knew exactly how many sales we had to make and exactly where our costs were, because we were in a situation where unless we paid cash on delivery, we didn't get stuff for the store. And you might say to yourself, well, okay, so how does that relate to running thousands of people in 70 countries all around the world? Well, all those fundamentals of really understanding passionate things like the customer experience, executing on a daily basis, all fed through into the leadership side of things. So when I think about some of my leadership philosophies that maybe we'll come along to, so a leader has to do a few things, but I summarize them down to 3 or 4. The first is have a clear vision of where you want to go and be learning and wanting to improve all the time. We were obviously, when Tesco's and Sainsbury's moved into the local area and people started getting their cars and going there, we had to find a different way to make our food business, our bakery, our shop more interesting. So what do? We innovated. Dad was a great cook, so we got him going out the back doing baking, custom cakes. He did some fantastic kind of pies and so on. That would bring in people to the store. We relayed out the store to force people to go right to the back of the store. And I don't know whether we could have patented this, but it was interesting to me about 20 years later, or maybe 10 or 15 years later, most superstores were doing this. You put the bakery at the back, these lovely smells wafting over you as you're shopping and all that kind of stuff, all again to try and create a fantastic experience. But of course, if you had to go to the back of the store to get your meat pie or steak kidney pie or your cake or your whatever you might, cheese straws, it was just an opportunity to find out, talk to customers, understand what would really make a difference to their experience and their lives, and so on and so on. So that's the first thing. Innovation, thinking, learning, understanding the customer, all came from that. And the second thing a leader has to do, so the innovation piece, vision, a very clear vision of where you want to go. The second piece for me was, Dad would say, look, the customers are about, you have to deliver on a daily basis. If someone walks in the store and they need bread and they don't get the bread they want, then they're going to be rightly angry. So you always have to execute every day. There's something about consistency, commitment, so that every time that a customer walks into our store, they get what they need and in fact go out happy. And so that's the second thing. A leader has to make sure that the customers and the people that you're working with get that on a daily basis. I love a story. I like scuba diving. We might get into this. So scuba diving is a thing for me. Not recently, obviously, and I'm looking forward to going back. As a kid, I watched Jacques Cousteau, absolutely spellbound by watching him on his ship Calypso and investigating the deep. And I said to myself, I'm going to do that one day. I really want to do that, and thankfully I have done it. But I tell this story that when you go out on the dive boat in the morning, it's an opportunity to meet new people. So you're on holiday. I think this was in St. Lucia, somewhere really lovely like that. So just thinking about it makes me feel good. And I'm next to this woman, and we're having the sort of classic divers conversation, which goes along the line: how are you? Where you from? Where have you dived before? Where's the most favorite? What's the favorite place you've dived? I would say something like the Barrier Reef or the Red Sea is absolutely fantastic, and various places. And it's just fascinating because that's your thing you've got in common. You might, be different people, your nurses, your doctors, your whatever you are, but on the boat, you're all together in this common quest. And I've probably done about about over 100 dives now. So some, but not that many. This woman was a instructor. She's very experienced. She's done thousands of dives. And so I thought, oh wow, look, she's done thousands of dives. Where's your, you must know, she's been to everywhere, Belize, she said. And she said the thing that was really profound, it struck me, she said, my best dive is the one I'm on now. Because what I'm thinking about is why and how this dive is going to be safe for you, because we were buddied up, you have a buddying system. What I'm going to see, what I'm going to look for, how I'm going to make sure that I don't touch anything and protect the reef, and so on. And yes, you could have a great conversation about some guy, as it happened, I think it was somewhere out in Belize, that she said she'd found really, really fantastic. But what struck me was that in the moment, you're a coach, we talk about being in the moment. She was in that moment, not thinking about anything that happened yesterday, an hour ago. She was going to just enjoy that moment. And so being in that moment, such an important thing for leaders. Think of the great leaders, any of your listeners, think of the great people you've loved, the women and men you regard as leaders. And what people often say, and I've found this, is they have that moment just for you. It's almost like you're the only person for that moment when they're talking to you. And they remember you, and they talk, and they empathize, and so on. So leadership things, vision, in the moment, deliver every day. And then the final thing is around people. And so, think about people, give them autonomy, give them the courage, give them the skills they need, give them the space to grow, give them the support they need, and create that culture. And then the final thing, that's why I said 3 or 4 things about 2 hours ago when you asked me this question, is yourself. Because in terms of Maslow thing, unless you get that Maslow bottom layer, i.e. you, right, so make sure you're looking after yourself, make sure you're learning, make sure you're fit, you're healthy, you're taking the time, you're prioritizing, and a conversation we were having around focus. And so all those things were why I go, when people ask me about my career, particularly if they look at time, and they'll indulge me and give me the opportunity to talk about it, I talk about those early years because they were so formative. What happened to me at 16, which was your question, again, about 3 hours ago, my mum and dad said, look, hey, you need to get a job now because we've looked after you. You need to get a trade. That was what everybody did around where we were. Apparently, teachers had phoned them up and said, look, you're smart, you should do it over, you should go to university, but I'm sorry, we can't really afford for you to do all that stuff. So go out, get a job. You'll still be working in the shop at weekends, by the way. By the way, I never really thought about that as a bad thing. It's just what you did. But that's where I kind of lucked out, because the luck for me at the time was BT, as you would know it now, as people around the world might know, was the General Post Office then, was moving its research centre from North London out to Suffolk. So, again, I got about one of 30 apprenticeships, and even then sort of 500 to 800 people applied for it, and I lucked out and got an apprenticeship there. And just to show for real, I brought, this is my GPO helmet.
Fantastic.
So as a technician, which I proudly have still, and I'm very proud about my time as a technician, literally climbing the poles, providing service to customers, and so on. And that's obviously how I got into the tech world through that route. So that's the story of how I ended up leaving school at 16, and how that's, I guess, affected my whole leadership career.
Wow. And that's pretty phenomenal, because someone hears, oh, I worked in a store. Actually, it's about, I guess what I'm getting there, it's a mindset thing as well, because it's also about being aware of your circumstance, what's going on, and questioning things in your own mind to learn, because you can kind of go through something almost unconsciously and just be doing it without thinking. But everything you've shared about what you learned from working in the store at a young age are things that you've brought into leadership. So you have to have a certain approach in your mind to that, of being questioning things and challenging things and looking for why are we doing this or why are we not doing something? So it's a mindset that's important to be aware of, I say, in whatever we're doing.
Yeah, no, 100%, because you're always thinking of what can I do more for the customer. Again, it comes back to, you know, my late father. What you've got to earn the right every day, son. It's their money, their hard-earned cash. They don't give it away for free. So you've got to earn the right. And then it's the whole thing that we talk about more as coaching and in leadership now around empathy. Put yourself in, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Rose's, you know, pensions in the village. What are they trying? They're up against it from kind of an economic point of view. What can we do around delivery? What can we do more in terms of helping them with their food? How can we connect with them with the community? We were very much into that's still providing sort of community services as much as anything, and particularly as the store and the post office, it became a community hub and a community centre too. And that wasn't through some cynical, I mean, anything in life is always authentic. It wasn't a cynical, how could we sell more? That was the one thing my dad would always say, never sell anything to anybody that they don't need. He would never do that. He would, and I wouldn't even think about it. I think he never called it selling, he called it helping. He said, find a way to help people. And that's another thing I've carried into life. It was never about trying to sell more, although that was a positive consequence of people coming back. And again, when you're talking about a SaaS business now and you're trying to think about recurring revenues, this is what you're trying to create. You create a customer experience is so good, people tell, you get viral market, you go there, the cakes are great, and you know what, they look after you. And if you want a delivery, they'll deliver, and all that kind of stuff. All those sorts of things. In order to make such a compelling customer experience, do you want more things? So I mean, we sold everything from paraffin for lighter, for gas, for heaters, through to shoes. I mean, you could literally get anything you needed. If we hadn't got it, we'd get it to you, within 24 hours. Again, they call you look at the brilliance of Amazon, but I would argue we were kind of doing that sort of stuff ages ago. And look, I'm not as rich as I'm not as rich as Jeff Bezos by any means, but it was just that mentality. And that's I think, when you look at the Amazon thing, I mean, there's lots, that whole focus on customer, and that whole predilection of action and trying to learn and being curious and experimenting. So I have my famous, I mean, curiosity is part of these so things. That whole thing is it is a leadership superpower. That desire to understand how you can be better, how your team can be better, how you can help more, and do that on a daily basis. Reflecting every day on what did I do right, what could I have done better, not in a way to sort of like self-flagellation and we're all human, but it's that kind of passion for curiosity, for learning and so on.
Yeah, I love that. I love everything you just shared there. And just coming back to a couple of points, you talked about the customer experience and being in the moment with someone else. When I talk about personal branding, one of the definitions that I think is the most important part of it is the feeling that others experience when they meet you, when they hear your name mentioned. It leaves that lasting impression. Yeah. And that's what we want to be doing all of the time. I think that's so important. So I love that. And also, as you said just there about doing your best and always looking to improve both yourselves and those around you. Again, for me, that's part of what I'm doing with clients is enabling them to show up as the best version of themselves. And I think it's sometimes people fail to realize almost that you need to work on yourself. You need to be showing up as the best you, because ultimately, you've just given a great example. We're always selling in everything that we're doing, whether it's literally or
helping.
Yeah, we're helping and serving. And we want people to know, like, and trust us. So to do that, it's important to be in the moment with people, to connect to them, to build those relationships. So yeah, really powerful stuff.
And also, as you say, very authentically too. I mean, you picked on, I mean, sorry, just think that, what was that? There's a great, is it Maya Goodfellow quote? People won't remember what he looked like, what he said, but they'll remember
Michelangelo.
how they made you feel, or how
Yeah.
you made them feel. I
Yeah.
think that's such a good thing, that feeling that you get when you think about something, or a great experience that and so on. So it's a great point.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and so helping and that's okay. The helping and the serving kind of fall into that, I feel, because people will feel that difference, as opposed to if you're trying to sell, like push the sale, versus serve someone, help them, for them to realize actually they can benefit from this, or the product, the service. So yeah, love this. So tell me a little bit about your talent for technology, for innovation, for transformation, and your passion for it, because that clearly shines through. So share with me a little about that, and how you almost discovered your passion for tech.
That's a great question. I suppose, I mean, again, it started early on. I mean, you kind of, as a kid, anything from, building go-karts to whatever. But at school, I'm old enough. I mean, we didn't actually have a GCSE or O level as in my days in computer science. Computer science was just coming in at that stage, and we could do something called a CSE, which a great teacher who's a friend to this day, Dr. Dave Williams, although I still call him Sir when he calls up. He lives in Canada now with his partner and family and so on. But in those days, computers were so new. I lived in rural North Suffolk. We had to travel about 30 miles to Norwich in order to have some time on a mainframe, so we could actually write some computer programs in both BASIC and a language called Pascal. But what you quickly realized is that the technology in itself was a way to improve lives. I mean, I talk in my kind of 7 C's model, which I've shared with you, about somebody having a cause. And if somebody's got a cause, which is a purpose, and we talk a lot about, purpose over profit, it's coming back into, I wouldn't say fashion. I mean, people are actually seeing why it's important. The point is, today's sexy technology is tomorrow's legacy technology. I'm 30 years and more in the industry. Technologies come and go, but if you have a purpose, and if you're fixated on doing good stuff, and that's the great thing about technology. And whilst it can be used always, if it's not properly designed and risks aren't thought through for some negative things, by and large, technology can be used for very positive things, making life more enjoyable, making life safer. And that's what I'm kind of very passionate about as we kind of look particularly at technology right now and into the future. Why it's really important that us in the technology industry play our significant part, I would say a really big leading part in the whole green tech thing around net zero and so on. There is an existential crisis. I'm happy to have the debate with climate deniers over whether the planet is in that much trouble, or whether it's all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, there are two great, we've really got to face up to the climate side of things. Clearly, we have some shorter term issues, and I'm not trying to be insensitive. Pandemics, and the current pandemic is very, very serious, and many people have lost their loved ones. So again, technology. And you think of what's happened on vaccines, amazing what's happened, the Oxford and all the people all around the world who've worked, again, one of my C's in the 7 C's model of collaboration, collaboratively to bring. So brilliant scientists, men and women all around the world, bringing that together. And, in answer to your question, that's what kind of, I think, really inspires me about science, technology, engineering and maths, and the whole sort of technology side of things. And why I think it's really important to make sure it's more of an inclusive thing. I mean, one of the worries I have right now is about inclusion. So it's, we've seen this in the UK around education and people not having, access to the internet. So why infrastructure, high-speed broadband, high-quality, secure infrastructure, to all homes, all schools, and devices and ways and means that people can kind of access is really, really important. And I think that's also important to make sure that we're doing that, across the globe. So, this is a rich planet with amazing people in it. So, they should all have an opportunity to also take part in the technological revolution that's undergoing, to make their lives better, safer. Some amazing things are going on in tech around health and so on, and all that should be available to people. So why I think tech is a great thing is I've never really thought to myself as so I'm very proud to say, and I put on my on official documents, I'm a chartered engineer. I'm very proud of being an engineer and so on. But it's engineering is all about applying science, technology, engineering to an outcome, and that's what it's kind of really important to me. I must say, I don't want to overemphasize STEM, because without the arts, life is not a great place. So I'm very fond of this STEAM acronym. So I couldn't think of a world where I couldn't read a great book, or watch a great movie, or go and see some amazing opera, or go and see whatever it and I'm some great jazz, whatever it might be. So I think it's also very important, by the way, to my brothers and sisters in the artistic world. I'm not suggesting it's just one thing or another. It never is that in life. It's about that whole life experience. So technology's there, and that's why I think we want to encourage more people of all backgrounds, of all genders. Obviously, there's been traditionally and still is a terrible lack of women coming into the technology profession, which great attempts to try and there's some wonderful role models out there, and needs to be more and more just to say, look, these are the sort of things you can do to shape the world. Our future needs to be shaped by the engineers and technologists of tomorrow, and that should be open to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And part of the purpose behind the mission with the podcast is to have people like yourself who can come and share your experiences, your learnings, and also for me it's about showcasing possibilities for the next generation, showing this is what is possible, this is what is out there. So I love what you just shared there, and just touching on that a little bit more, would you say then that when you started out at BT, or at GPO as it was, and you kind of got into this space and it evolved into the tech side, did you ever conceive that tech would play such an integrated part in our day-to-day lives as it is today?
Well, I suppose the honest answer, I hope it doesn't sound arrogant, was yes. In those days, everybody had a telephone. It enabled me to communicate with my parents and grandparents. When I went overseas and I was running the international teams, I still remember to this day phoning back home from Australia, and Mum would always say, "Oh, hello, Paul. Isn't the line clear? Isn't that amazing?" And you kind of just thought, well, yeah, that's what engineer. I was fortunate enough to be involved with engineering the first optical fiber, transatlantic cables, satellite systems. It was just all the being able to being involved in helping being part of the team that this will date me. This is probably before you were born, but Reagan and Gorbachev, when providing the comms so that summit could happen, which effectively was arguably the end of the Cold War. A dramatic event, and then being able to broadcast all the broadcast links were uplinked by BT people and the satellite teams that I was part of. My boss was the guy that led it, and so being part of all that and being experienced, it's like, this is just, I was just like a kid from rural Suffolk, and now we're here kind of doing all this stuff. But it's kind of obvious that technology, even then, was going to be and is, a fundamental part. And now everything has a tech. Tell me something in life which hasn't got tech underpinning it? I mean, nothing. I can't hardly think of anything that hasn't got some form of tech, which hopefully is either underpinning it or making it easier to, easier to deliver.
Yeah. So what, if anything, has actually surprised you the most in all of that?
What surprised me? That question surprised me, I suppose. Nothing kind of springs to mind. It's a bit of a kind of lame answer, I suppose. If anything, that it's taken some time for some. Well, my experience now. If I kind of, when you first went in, and I worked at the BT's research labs, and you would be designing things, and you'd be innovating things, and you'd be doing proof of concept and minimum viable products, and you're thinking, hey, why can't we get them out there? I mean, this stuff is working in a lab. And what you come to realize, obviously pretty quickly as you get experience, is there's a lot more kind of barriers to things. So if I use the experience from my own history, we did the first broadband service. I mean, we were providing 25 megabits to customers in London with direct fiber in 1990. One of the first things that happened to me was, as part of a launch process and so on, rightly so, the business said, well, you have to have a billing process, and you have to have a way of doing operations, and we did all those sort of things. But part of the launch, sign off was you have to have a billing process that works, been signed off by finance, and finance went to finance colleagues and said, well, you have to have it through this system, that system, that system, that system. So I went to the IT people who own that system, that system, that system, and they said, ooh. And there was a very large bill and many months. Now, we'd already committed pretty much to customers that we were going to go out and launch. So the bills for the first, I think, year of that were basically handwritten by me or typed out by me, because they were low volume. And I just found it sounds a bit crass, but it was authorized by everybody. I got everybody on board. I believe in collaborative, life. Business is a team sport. It requires leadership, but it's a team sport, and so on. So the thing that surprises me, and I think surprises a lot of people, is how long sometimes it can take to get from something that you've seen working, out to really impacting on people's lives, and with an appropriate customer experience, and just doing what some people would call boring things of being able to order it, being able to provide it, being able to fix it when it goes wrong, and so on, and making sure all those things, and then being able to kind of scale it up. And it's interesting to me that when you look at some of the differences between an entrepreneurial life and a corporate life, because I've kind of worked in both. Obviously started very, very small business and entrepreneurial, went into running large global teams, and I've gone back to investing and working with startups and scale-ups of anything from a few people through to a few hundred. But that's one of the main differences. I see that the speed that startups and scale-ups can move at. They'll experiment, they'll trial things, they'll go for things. I have to say that corporate life has got a lot better and a lot faster, but generally speaking, the things that surprises you is how quickly those things, how long it takes sometimes to get from an idea into actually out there.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. So, having been most of my career in the corporate space, you can see things can take quite long to get from, just an idea to actually implementing and putting it out there. So, and that was kind of leads me nicely into my next question is, you've had extensive experience both in corporate and in startup, as you said, so both C-suite and advisory capacity and owning startups. So tell me a little bit about this. So first of all, what would you say are the core distinctions when you look at the two, in terms of, for example, the different hats that you need to wear across the two and the different thinking? the approach perhaps that you'd need to take when approaching each scenario?
Yeah, I think the main thing with startups, of course, is that you are definitely wearing lots and lots and lots of different hats. I mean, normally the corporate world is you are functionalized, and then there's some sort of amalgamating, bringing it together. In a startup scale-up world, you're often literally doing everything from finance through to HR, as well as in the tech side of things. That said, there's quite a lot of, in fact, vast majorities, 80 or 90% of the things I'd argue are the same, except that often there are not so many O's at the end of things. I mean, I would hark back to my formative experience. I was telling in the store, in the village store, and the village bakery, and things that we were doing there. Right, those fundamentals of selling, marketing, the principles. It's just how you apply them into a global context and so on. I think so an entrepreneurial environment, people will tend to experiment and will tend to be, I think, just faster to move. Often they are people who have put their houses and reputations. They've taken a very, very big risk. With all due respect to sort of corporate colleagues, we might have innovated within corporate environment, but probably at the end, what risks were we taking really, and what we were really jeopardizing. You can have a discussion there. I think the other thing about an entrepreneur and difference, thinking about the entrepreneur and the sort of corporate world, is the amount of time an entrepreneur often has to be thinking about fundraising and where the money is coming from and where the cash is coming from, to keep this idea that they're passionate about going. Particularly at the early stages, that can chew up so much time, where actually what you want to be doing is spending time on improving the product, improving the customer, and so on. So a lot of my advisory work and the work with Scale Up Group and so on is really to help entrepreneurs there, because these are women and men with great ideas. They really have a focus about what they want to do, but they realize they need cash to essentially fuel that, and raising money at the right valuation with the right terms and conditions and so on can be exhausting and exhaustive time and so on. You don't necessarily have that sort of problem. That said, also when you look at it, I mean, when we think of, if you ask the old person, who's a great entrepreneur, they'll often come up with, I don't know, Jobs or Steve Jobs or Bill Gates and so on. These are not small companies, so they may start off as a startup scale up, but they clearly have the ability to learn and understand what it takes to run a big global corporation and so on. And often also when they need to bring in advisors or coaches to help them on that way.
Yeah. So when if someone's, say, starting out or early in their career and they're thinking about what's their next move, and I've had people who've spoken to me about this, where they've said they're maybe in a large corporate and they're thinking, I maybe want to move to a startup. What are the unique traits that someone maybe should consider when looking at that decision? So whether they go down the bigger corporate route or the startup, are there unique traits that they need to look at? I think, do I have that? Is that something I want to be doing?
Oh, yeah, I think particularly depending on what age they are, I think I'd be encouraging them to experiment and think it through, and do a few more fundamental things about, what are they doing it for and why, and really getting underneath those sorts of questions. I think one of the problems of shows like Dragon's Den and other things, and maybe some other kind of celebrity stories, celebrity entrepreneurial stories, is there's a think that this is easy. I have an idea, I code it up, and off I go, sort of thing. And that's not actually to sort of dismay or disrupt anybody coming into. I think we need more, and I think one of the big things for me, as you heard from my earlier comments was social mobility, and social mobility is a great way, particularly in a, you know, for people of, dare I say, of from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, to have an opportunity to kind of break into whatever they might do. So if their cause is to, you know, make a difference in the world, you know, being an entrepreneur and delivering their vision, and, you know, getting up in the morning every day and working like an entrepreneur does to make her vision or enable her vision to be delivered, then, you know, that's a good place to be. Having said that, I mean, the corporate side of life, the great thing about corporates is you get a chance to, you know, you're working on, I mean, I mentioned in my BT career, you get to work on massive, you know, global programs. And if you're working in a startup and a scale up, you might eventually get there, but you'll, by definition, have to be involved in the sort of niche that you're working on. Whereas you might want to think, hey, if I work at a large telco or a large bank or a large whatever, you have the opportunity to work. The other thing I'd say about working in a large company that I enjoyed is I rarely did the same job for more than 2 or 3 years, because I was curious about how I could learn. And I also thankfully had kind of mentors and people who would say, well, okay, now you've kind of shaped up that area, we'll promote you, and you can kind of go over there and try something new. Generally, I don't like the idea, if I use a team analogy, is if you're a great scrum half, or if you're scrum half, don't try and be an amazing prop forward, or don't try and be a fullback, or if you're a football player, you know, if you're a great goalkeeper, don't try and be a centre forward. Often you see that happening. Oh, you know, you've done these jobs, so we're going to move you around. I'm a great believer in you're hired for what you do well, so improve those skills, but kind of recognise you're in a wider ecosystem and in a wider team, and life, business is a team sport. So I think that's kind of really important aspect of it. I don't know if that kind of made sense.
It does. It absolutely does. And I think on the back of that, I'd ask you, if someone has got a very strong entrepreneurial spirit, and you're a great example of this, but if you take that more broadly, would that person find it fairly easy to survive and to thrive in a corporate setting, or are they best placed staying within that entrepreneurial space, would you say? How easy is it to adapt between the two?
I think it's a hard question to ask or answer in a kind of a more general thing, because I think it's horses for courses. I think you can be very entrepreneurial within a corporate. Most of my entrepreneurial friends who I know who are out and out serial entrepreneurs will say that's absolute, they might use an expletive. But I've seen some amazing kind of entrepreneurs who are in big companies, or they've turned their ideas and their portfolio of ideas, you know, from whether you're, you know, Apple through to Amazon, into small ideas, into, you know, massive ideas, and continuing to innovate and so on. And indeed, you kind of look at the, you know, Amazon's 14 principles, that whole idea of my kind of curiosity thing, and the constantly learning and innovating is a really important part. And therefore, I think if you've got an entrepreneurial spirit, you can thrive. There are some that, you know, might want. That said, there are always, by definition, within corporates, certain rules and strictures. And if you love, you know, total autonomy, I mean, I think leadership needs to give people autonomy, whether you're in a startup or a scale up or a corporate anyway. But if you really want and you're passionate about that autonomy, and you think things are going to get in your way, then clearly getting some people to work with you on your startup scale up, getting some funding, and driving it forward is the right route for you. So I'm really always reluctant, which you could say I'm doing a politician's fudge the answer or not answer. I rarely like to pigeonhole people or anybody, because you're a coach, I'm a coach. I would sit down and really understand their motivations of what's important for them, and then I'd be in a better place, I think, to advise or mentor them in terms of what route. What I would say is, having been, what do you call it, poacher turned gamekeeper turned poacher, I don't know if that analogy is I've definitely seen life from both sides, and I do know that an entrepreneurial mindset is absolutely fundamental, whether you're obviously working in a startup scale up by definition, but also within in corporate these days. The great thing about corporates is you have scale, you already have customers, you have resources, both people and finances, to enable you to kind of make things happen. When I was fortunate enough to recognize, because I've been traveling a lot, that there was this thing called the internet, and that was going to be a bit of a future for us at BT, to go to the board and say, look, sorry, I don't think we should be a phone company anymore. We need to be an internet company, and then obviously a broadband company and then a media company. But initially, as stupid as that might seem, taking that first business case up to the BT board at the time, there was a massive kind of, we really need to do all this stuff. I'm clearly coming along and saying to the board what we need to spend a load of money to replace very profitable services with less profitable services wasn't very welcome. But of course, my argument was that it would be better for us to do it to ourselves and control it and be ahead of the curve than being behind it. So doing that was kind of brilliant, fascinating, very challenging, but nevertheless, a great thing to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just love hearing what your whole career and everything you've done, because it's so diverse and it's bringing so many different aspects, so many skills to the table. And I think for our audience, it's important to just recognize you're sharing what is possible, because as I said at the start, you've done it all. So I love it. And tell me, what is the best advice that you've ever received when it comes to your career?
These all, in a way, ended up sounding a little bit cliche, but I think the most one is, stay curious, be curious, and always keep learning. And then it would be remiss of me not to mention Dad and Mum, who'd always say, always do your best. And I think that's a great philosophy, because if you at the end of the day, I mean, in coaching, in leading, if you sit down with people and you ask them, have you done your best? Have you done everything? Then you can. I mean, if you play sport, let's use sport to play kind of. If you've left nothing on the field, if you've trained hard, you've worked on your skills, and you've done everything you could, and you still lost, then what do? You reflect on it, you learn on what you could have done better, and then next time you go on the pitch to play, you go and win. Or if you're coaching the team, you motivate them to go and do it. I think life is very, very tough, right? I mean, it's tough for a lot of people at the moment. I've got it a lot easier than most. And I think there's always, I mean, in a way, my philosophy is there's always someone having it harder than you. This is also not a message to say, look, if you need help, go and ask for it. I mean, we all know that's important in right now, and thankfully, and it's okay to be vulnerable as whoever you are, and ask for help. Ask for help, and I would always encourage. One of my, again, come back to parents. My mum would always have sort of three things: KLC. She said, be kind, love and be loved, and care for someone. And so she always say, who have you called today? Who have you reached out for? So kind of do that. That's a really good thing to do. So all these things I think are, the best advice. The most recent one was a story which I think was quite a good one, which really resonated with me around, I'm trying to remember. Oh yes, it's a kind of, as I've been helping companies and working with companies as we're going through the difficulties of right now. It's thing called the Stockdale paradox. Have you heard about this one?
No, I haven't.
No. So the Stockdale paradox is this. This is so I'm trying to remember. Admiral Stockdale was a U.S. naval aviator, a Top Gun, if you will, in the Vietnam War. He gets shot down and imprisoned, and when they interview him afterwards, after the war's over, because he's in prison for many years, and he's asked, what got you through it? And he said, and this is the kind of entrepreneurial thing, he said, I never stopped believing that I was going to get out. I knew I was going to get out. I was going to see my kids again. I was going to see my wife again. I was going to see my friends again. I never stopped believing that. But I was unbelievably realistic that it wasn't going to happen this month, Christmas, or next year, because that's just not what's going to happen. And so in a sense, he'd set him up for never stop believing in himself. So you should never stop believing in yourself. I should never stop believing in myself. And anybody, I'm working with, you'd say the same, and truly mean it authentically, of course, because I do. But also be very, very realistic about, the challenge you're up against. And particularly when, entrepreneurs, or when you have to go through different people decisions, hiring and firing decisions, those kinds of things. I think it's a good kind of philosophy, and always bring that humanness into that as well. When we've had to do in my global career at BT, we had to do a number of downsizing rounds, as has happened recently. And there's ways and means that you can do, downsizing, making people redundant. Let's try and basically have, people having to lose their jobs, and doing it in a way that is transparent, communicated well, fair, and supports the person on their ongoing journey is would be really important to me. That's part of your value set and the culture that you set as a leader. So again, comes back to leadership stuff. So again, about 5 hours ago when you asked me, I think it starts off with always do your best, and I really just love the idea of never stop learning. I did a coaching accreditation a couple of years ago because I wanted to formally just done an Agile Leadership certification / course, a couple of days. It's always looking to improve skills, and always therefore help the companies I'm working with in terms of advisory, the people I'm coaching and mentoring, helping to raise money for.
And so tell me then, as a final question, if you were to do it all again, what, if anything, would you do differently?
That's a really great question, because I've always tried to set out with having a philosophy of no regrets. And I'd also always say to someone that I was working with and coaching, I support you in the decision you're making based on, if you're doing your best, if you're doing all the hard work and you've made a decision in good faith and the decision turns out to be wrong, a bit like an entrepreneur, if she has an idea, she takes it to market, as we all know, was it only 1 in 10, maybe less than that, kind of make it to the marketplace or become successful. But you respect and admire them. And I kind of look back on my career and think to myself, wow, what could I have done different? I think we all, I did spend, because you work hard, you always think to yourself, did I ever leave something on the table in terms of opportunities to be with the family and all those kinds of things? And by and large, although I was doing a a lot of global work at the time. I'd always make it back for weekends and so on. So there was some balances we struck as a family unit, as a family team. I mean, I don't want to be flippant, but I think sometimes you need to enjoy life and enjoy more. I think at the time, what I didn't realize, particularly with the internet and the broadband stuff, how pioneering it was. And when I look back at it now, I think, wow, we did some incredible things with almost no people. You know, we took the first IP service from no customers to 10 million within 18 months. You know, it was just amazing, and it was just a great team. It was just a great feeling at that time. It's hard. So I think, although I felt like we celebrated, we had a lot of fun, just making sure that, you know, everybody recognizes, you know, how good it is to be in this moment. And no, it in one sense, kind of no regrets. It's hard, as arrogant as that seems. Don't feel like I would do anything differently. It's just been, you know, a wonderful career, an opportunity to meet and work with some amazing people all around the world. You know, many who, you know, from Japan to the States and South Africa to Norway. You know, some people all across the world who I thoroughly respect and thoroughly think are amazing. And, you know, starting on as a kid in rural Suffolk, what's not like?
Yeah. And it's a great place to be, right? Great place to be able to say that.
And look, hey, it's not over for me. I mean, there's this big thing about evergreen. I mean, we talk not green in 10 sense, but, you know, there is, at all stages in your life, you've clearly got a lot to give. I mean, now I'm you know, in my 50s. It's just fabulous to sort of give back, both in terms of, you know, investing time, money in the people and so on. Because you know, we talk about social mobility. Social mobility is passion of mine. It's important. I was lucky enough to have that opportunity. You know, I was that person, and you know, people gave me chances. They helped me. They mentored me, and it's important that we all kind of do that stuff. Plus, you know, there's I mentioned the existential crisis on climate change and green tech and all that kind of stuff. And at 50 years old, and a lot of 50-year-olds are still starting up companies. They're scaling up companies. They've, you know, there's, you know, a lot of life left to live even into relatively older ages, both in terms of helping 20-year-olds in terms of, you know, mentoring their businesses, through to, you know, starting up your own or helping in startups now. So for me, I'm still on the journey, and I'm still in the moment, and I'm still definitely staying curious.
Love it. I think for me, listening to you today, the 3 big takeaways for me, you just said it there: stay curious and keep learning, always do your best, and be in the moment.
Perfect. I've enjoyed being in the moment with you. It's been a great conversation.
Well, absolutely. Thank you very, very much for your time. I know how busy you are, so I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat with me. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do subscribe to the show so you don't miss any future episodes. And remember to leave a review telling us about your key learnings and what you enjoyed the most. And do share this podcast with your friends and colleagues so we can spread the word on the importance of personal branding when it comes to your career advancement. And also ensure that others can benefit from these invaluable insights from many inspirational leaders. I will be eternally grateful. And if you are looking to earn more money, to get promoted, to secure your next role and advance your career, and would like me to support you personally on that journey to get you there, then reach out to me and let's arrange a chat. Alternatively, why don't you check out my personal branding launchpad? a group training and mentoring program. Finally, if you'd like to connect with me directly, then do reach out and direct message me on LinkedIn. You can find the link as well as any other resources mentioned in the show notes. I'll see you next time.